All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to the webinar all about iOS 16 focus modes. I'm really happy to be here. We were talking before I pushed the button, the first recording done from the new indoor studios. I hope you guys are digging it. We're still getting everything tuned in. I literally moved the desk in like yesterday. So a lot of the furniture is not in here yet and things aren't set up just right, but I've got decent lighting and the sound's okay. And when I set this one, I set this intentionally saying, I want this to be the very first thing I produce in indoor studios. And it is. So I wanted to share it with the lab members and those of you that signed up, I really appreciate it. We got big participation today. Really appreciate folks coming in. And thank you for your support in the MacSparky Labs. I mean, this is what enables me to really dig in on this. Um, the uh, the reason why focus modes are such a big deal to me is that this is kind of, when I gave up being a lawyer, I thought, well, what am I doing with my life? What's my purpose? And I've I really feel like my purpose is to help people get better at this stuff. And there's really a problem out there. Maybe I'll call this the Sparky doctrine and be very egotistic, but when I remember when computers first showed up and the promise of computers was amazing. I mean, the idea that you could have digital documents or digital records, that you could make copies of them, that the computer could do automation for you, all this stuff seemed like it was going to change the world. And I embraced it wholeheartedly. But somewhere along the line, I feel like Silicon Valley lost the thread. And it started when they realized that they could make a lot of money selling you ads. And at some point, computers went from being the device to help you be productive to the anti-productive device. You get on a computer or a mobile device, and they want you to go to Facebook and to Instagram and to all these places that steal your focus. They take you away from the work that's important. And every person has to define for themselves what their important work is, but I can guarantee it's not scrolling through the news endlessly or looking at pictures on Instagram. I mean, that is what's taking you away from it. But I feel like there's still hope. And it's like we're a band of rebels here. We're going to figure out how to use technology to be productive and to get the stuff that's important to us done, despite the fact that there are brilliant people in Silicon Valley trying to steal your attention every day. And they're coming out with new ways to do it every time these apps update or whatever the new thing is. But we can, if we care, actually get back to that original promise and make computers and technology serve us in a way that can help us be better at what we want to do. And I think focus modes are an excellent way to do that. It's one of the good things. And I think that Apple has made significant improvements over the last year. And if you were trying them last year and you weren't happy with them, I think you can be happy now. They've made the necessary changes. And I want to show you what's different about it, how I'm using it, some hacks and some automation stuff we can do with it. But my goal is when you get out of this thing to be inspired enough to give this a try, because this really can help you stay focused and keep you off of, the downside of technology. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here on my phone. We're going to do this live. All right, so we're good. This is actually, just to start out, this is my personal focus mode. And you can see that because I've got the little personal icon up there. So that tells me I'm in personal focus mode. But it's even easier for me because my focus modes are color coded. And this one is orange. In my brain, orange means personal. And so the screen color changes to be personal, orange. And it's got a setup of apps and services that I use when I'm doing personal time. And you can see, I don't hate Instagram. There's time for that, right? If you want to go in there and see what your friends are up to. But this is intentional time that is personal time. When I switch to work, this Instagram icon isn't going to show up on the screen. I do a lot of stuff in day one, so I put a widget there. I like to listen to music or dark noise, so I put those there. So these are a collection of apps that I thought when I'm in personal time that I may want to see. And that orange background is going to tell me that's where I'm at. So that's kind of just to show you as a starting point how I'm using it. But I'd like to go through actually and just kind of look at the new focus modes. So let's go down. If you go to settings and go down to focus, you can have up to 10. You can see I'm using all 10, and this is always a work in progress for me. Sometimes I'm removing and adding new ones, but let's just start out with, let's start with this personal one because this one's very interesting to me. The One of the problems we had with focus modes before iOS 16 was that they operated on an inclusive basis only, which meant that, and its top row deals with that. You say, what people are you going to let through? And what apps are you going to let through in terms of notifications? And you had to add people if you wanted. And so it only had, if you look at it now, you can silence notifications or allow notifications from, you've got two options here. Before you only had this option, which meant that if I wanted a personal focus mode and I wanted to say, well, I want to let everybody contact me when I'm in personal mode. The only way I could have done that would have been to go through and manually add every person in my address book, which is completely insane. But now they've added the ability to silence instead. So it's basically saying, let everybody in except the people that I carve out. And this is hugely useful for making these focus modes that you want to be more liberal. Sometimes you want a focus mode where you aren't necessarily trying to cut it down to just a few people. But you do have the option to cut people out with this. Like I had from the old law practice, something come up last month where suddenly I had lawyers calling me again. And I went through and added all of those people to silence notifications from them when I was in personal mode because I didn't want to deal with it. It was kind of a headache and I didn't want to hear about it when I was in personal mode. So you can add people and then I took them out when that was over. But this is just a very liberal focus mode, which is something that wasn't possible before. And then if I go back, same thing for apps. You can allow notifications from only a certain number of apps with this, and which is what we historically had. Or you can silence notifications from just the apps that are violators. And this is wide open for me right now. But if I had an app suddenly, like if I was, honestly, back when I was doing legal work, this would have been something I used more. Like if I had Basecamp for the law practice and suddenly I was getting a bunch of law-related stuff in my personal time, I would just add Basecamp as an excluded application, and then I would be able to truly have personal time without being interrupted. It's easier for me now as a MacSparky. Going through this, you also have these options. And the options are where you can get the notifications in other places. You can have them show on lock screen, or you can hide the notification badges. But the one that's really worth noting here is this dim lock screen. And this is particularly for folks that got the the iPhone 14 Pro and has that always on screen. I know some people don't like the wallpaper showing up. When you have it on your desk and it still shows a picture of your dog or whatever, and that makes you think the phone's still on, or you just don't like it. If you throw this switch, you can make it so that doesn't show up. You just get a lock screen that's black with just your widgets and the time on it. I actually don't mind. And in fact, when you see my lock screens in it, you'll see that I'm using the lock screens to also indicate what focus mode I'm in. And so I keep that turned off. And a running theme you're going to hear from me today is I really want constant reminders of what focus mode I am currently in. If I'm in personal mode, that really helps me not get hung up on work stuff. If I'm in work mode, avoid personal stuff. If I'm in podcasting mode, I have these different modes in my life. And when I trigger one using those colors and using the lock screen, it's a very easy way to keep reminding myself what I should be doing at this moment, which gets back to the original problem that I'm trying to solve as MacSparky. Scrolling down, you can see I have customized the lock screen. I got this little meditating guy here in personal mode in orange. And then I have a lock screen color in orange. And I even have a watch face that has orange highlights on it. And I've made a bunch of different watch faces. and they have different colors. Like if I look at my watch and the highlights are blue, I know that I'm in MacSparky work mode. If they're orange, I know I'm in personal mode. If they're green, I know I'm in podcasting mode. So I make it really hard for me to not get reminders of what I should be doing in the moment. And, we are what was it? Somebody told me that there's only like 3% difference between monkey and human DNA. I mean, we are very close to being monkeys. So we need to give ourselves these kinds of tricks to hopefully keep us on target. I'm going to get later into how you activate these focus modes, but there's a bunch of ways you can do that. Like you can put it on a schedule. You can have it do what they call smart activation, where it tries to turn itself off and on. I'll tell you my experiences, smart activation is not worth a damn. It doesn't seem to really ever figure me out. But scheduling is good. And we've also got some automation stuff we can do with that. And then the other new feature that we have is this idea of focus filters, which is kind of ingenious. So the idea of focus filters is, hey, why don't we have apps limit what kind of information they can show you? And if I tap on that, this is for conversations and messages, but if I add filter, here are the installed apps I have that are taking advantage of this. And this is early days with iOS 16. We're going to get a lot more of this. So the Fantastical is an excellent example. With it, I can choose a specific calendar set, and I have a lot of calendars. But let's say I'm in work mode and say, just show me Sparky operations. I can click that and it'll just show me that. Or if I'm in personal mode, just show me my personal calendars. And you can see it's inclusive here. So I can check off multiple ones if I want, or I can just check off one. And it works the same, even better for mail. So you can say, give me only my MacSparky email when I'm in this mode, or only give me my personal email, which is iCloud. And so I've got the ability to filter what content I see in various applications. Now, this is just beginning. There are a lot more. I've talked to app developers, and they're all kind of getting on the bandwagon with this. So anybody that has an app that displays data that you can segregate is thinking about, well, how can I use this with my app? Because it's a great way to keep you focused. They also have some system filters. The most useful one to me is the appearance one, where you can say, well, if I go into work mode, make it dark, or if I go into personal mode, make it light. I don't actually use that, but I can see why it's there. And then they also have a low power mode one, where you can have it automatically turn on low power mode if you go into a specific focus. So that's kind of an overview of what you can do with it now. I'm going to get into some more, just to give you kind of an outline of where I intend to go with this is, I want to talk about some ways I'm hacking it with these colors. There's a real specific way you need to set the wallpaper, which I think is broken, but there's a way around it. I'm going to teach you that. I want to share my focus modes with you and how we trigger them. But just on the general kind of overview of focus modes, are there any questions before we kind of go on to the next topic?
David, how'd you add the watch face there? That's not showing up on mine.
Okay. Are you on iOS 16?
Yes.
Okay. And have you done the most recent update on your Apple Watch? You want to make sure.
Oh, no, there is an update I'm supposed to do. Is that what kicks it in?
Possibly, but let me just show you how it works once you get it going. So you can see here on my screen, there is the watch face. If I hit the edit button, it gives me a list of all my different watch faces. And you just pick one. Like, see, I have infograph here with orange. That's the one I'm using. This one is actually blue on my watch, but for some reason it hasn't updated. We're kind of early days with this stuff, but you just pick the one you want and then you click done. And then the trick is just to go into the watch app and create alternate watch faces for each focus mode that you want to engage in. Recently, I've spent a lot of time. I'm not a fan of basically all of Apple's watch faces. I really wish they would allow third parties to make them. But I've realized that the infograph analog face works for me. And that was a surprise to me, because when you actually look in the watch app at the examples of it here, I mean, they're horrible. I mean, look at all those things. It's like a disaster. But actually, if you go into it, you can customize it to make it a lot more subtle. And so what I did was I went in and I took the infograph face and I kind of made it more subtle. I try to make a point to not put the wraparound widgets like this in the top corners. I try to keep it clear so you can actually read what the next appointment is, and just keep it subtle. And then I find that's working for me. See, this green one here is the one I use for podcasts. So I've got the time zone in Memphis where Stephen lives, in London where Rosemary lives. I've got a 30-minute timer. So I set a timer after each ad break to make sure that we don't go for an hour. And this is all appropriate stuff for when you're podcasting. And personal, I have the sunset time because I like to hike in the evenings. I want to make sure I get back before it's dark, and set a meditation timer, or the temperature. This is all stuff you do personally. I always put the countdown timer in the lower left corner because I love timers. And so I just have it always available. Shelton, you had your hand up?
Yes. Back on the inclusive and exclusive choices.
Sure.
Is it an either or proposition, or can you include everything except this, or vice versa, or do you have to pick one or the other?
Yeah, it's a bridge too far for Apple. It's one or the other, although it's quite powerful when you think about it. Like the example I just shared was personal, where I generally want everybody, when I'm on downtime, any of my friends or family can call me, and the people I work with are my friends too. So I don't feel any burning desire to exclude them. Whereas when it's work, then I do only allow from certain people, and that's really helpful. I do wish, and I've talked about this on Mac Power User, I do wish they allowed you to do it by contact group. Like if you had a contact group of clients, wouldn't it be great if you say allow notifications from the client group? And then if you add a new client, they're automatically in. You don't have to go and manually do it. But I have talked to someone on the inside about this. Whoops. And they know, and I've submitted tickets. This is something they're aware of, and it just takes a while, I guess. Any other questions before we move on to the next topic?
David, I had a couple of questions come
Sure.
in. Francine was asking, she's interested to learn how notifications interact with contact groups.
Well, that's just, in terms of the focus mode, they don't. I wish they did. You can't. There's just no way to filter it, and really that's the problem. So the answer is they don't. We just don't really have a way to limit it that way right now. I'd like to see that. One thing you can do is you can put VIPs as a special super contact group, and you can limit notifications to just them. But in general, Apple has not gone far enough down that rabbit hole to give us the granular control by focus group or by contact group. And this would be the perfect place to put it in. Rather than add people here, what if we had add people or add contact group? And then you could just click that, pick any contact group, and then you're done. And like I said, they're aware of it. And I'm hoping that maybe in a future update that gets added.
Just a couple more. Matt, I think, Matt, you ended up seeing and answering your own question. He was asking about third-party calendars like Fantastical, whether they honor focus mode calendar sets. I think you showed that to us. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And finally, Damien noticed that you configured all 10 focus modes, and he's wondering how many of those do you activate each day?
How many do I? Okay, let me look real quick. Okay, so the Disneyland one I only activate when I go to Disneyland, which is a shocking amount of time, maybe 3 times a month, 4 times a month. The deep focus, not daily, but probably at least every couple days. Driving triggers automatically when I get in the car, which I try not to. I'm a hermit at this point in my life. Personal every day, podcasting on podcasting days, so usually 2-3 times a week. Production, almost daily. It's when I'm doing production work. I'll explain what that means in a minute. Reading, every night I read, and so that one gets used. Sleep gets turned automatically, and work gets used every day. So it just depends, they have a cool mindfulness one or a health related one. I feel like I need to put that in, and I'm not sure which one I can kill to do that. Possibly deep focus, and I'll explain that when I get to describing mine, because there's a lot of overlap between deep focus and do not disturb for me. So I was thinking maybe I could get rid of it, but I do kind of like the idea of saying the chemical thing that you do in your brain when you say, no, I'm in deep focus now, which means I'm really drilling down on something and I'm not going to let anybody talk to me. So there's something aspirational to that for me. But
Where do you do your writing?
Deep focus.
Deep focus.
Yeah. Work for me is like all the admin and just the general stuff of being MacSparky, dealing with customer support, email, planning, working with, like, JF and I talk at least once a week, and that's like work time, the stuff like that. But when I actually am making something that's not a video product, video products of being like screencasts and videos are production, because there's different filters, because I really can't be interrupted when those are going, because I don't want it to be on the recording. But writing goes into just deep work. And the other thing I do with deep focus is thinking about big problems, like what am I going to do next and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a blurry line between deep focus and work, but in my head, I know what they are. And so I've shared with you a few hacks already, but the ones that really works for me is this idea of color and context. Here, I'm going to open it up here. Whoops. This thing, Face ID, is so good that it's hard to, okay, there we go. So now you can see my various lock screens. So that's personal. And you can see these are all attached already. You can see right there. So if I switch to the screen, it's going to put me in the personal focus mode. This is production work, which is this kind of aqua shade of blue. This is podcasting. Mac Power Users has the green color in the logo, so I've always thought of green as the podcasting color. But all of these are very simple, and when they're on my stand, I see a little microphone, and you see there's the time in Cupertino and London and Memphis. This is stuff that I need to be doing, and it's a reminder that I'm in that focus mode. This one is purple, I know is reading. And this is deep work with MacSparky. This is standard work, which is a lighter blue. There's a Disneyland one. And that one, I'll show you the details of it, but that one is triggered just by me being at Disneyland. This is just kind of a general one I use that I just like that saying. Merlin Mann said that on a podcast years ago, and that always inspired me. So I have a screen with this cut the bullshit thing. And then this is my little puppy, of course. I'm still playing with they've got a lock screen. This kind of goes beyond what we're talking about today, but they've got a lock screen thing that does some of your favorite photos, and it arranges them. And I like that, but sometimes it gives me photos I don't want to see. So I've got to dial that in still. So to get back to it, if I'm going to go into work mode, I'll just tap here. And when I swipe up, you can see that now I've got my calendar. I've got my, so you guys can see my invoicing has to go out. And then I've got the icons to the apps that I really use a lot when I'm doing work. And this background color is blue. I want to talk about that for a minute, because this is something that is not obvious and kind of difficult to implement. So I'm going to show you. If you go into this work mode, you can see that I have selected this work color, and I've got this color here that I use, and I wanted to have the same color on the background of the home screen, not just the lock screen. And by default with iOS 16 at this point, it always just uses the color of the last used. Once you set the color in wallpaper, it sticks. So if I had been using the personal, then I would go to the home screen and it would have all of my work apps with an orange background, which is, not helping me wire my brain. So the way to get around that is you have to create them in the wallpaper segment of the settings app. So you can see here, that is the wallpaper right there. I'm going to tap on that, and I'm going to say add new wallpaper. And I'm going to just go to my photos and click all. And you can see I've created these little templates here. And I did this in Pixelmator Pro, but you could do them in Preview or any app, where I just take a color, make it roughly an iPhone shape. And then I'm using the SF symbols, which I think everybody can get access to. I would recommend you search that. It's a bunch of icons that Apple has, but you can get icons off Google Images too. just search for PNG transparent so they don't have any color behind them, and you drop them on top and you get kind of a nice basic look. And then so once I select that, then I can say, okay, well, this is going to be my podcasting one. So I'm going to, oops, I can't select it with the mouse. I got to use my finger. There we go. And so there we go. Now I've created a new home screen, and I can, kind of play with it and move it around if I want. I can add widgets. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to add that. And this is where you got to pay attention. So this is all done in the wallpaper, not in the focus modes. And say set as wallpaper pair. Yes, you need to do that. Okay. So now it's giving me a matched wallpaper for the home screen. And you can see it blurs out the little icon in the middle there. You got that white blob in the middle. I don't like that. So I just say customize. And then you go down here and you see there's a little button for the color. If you just tap that, then you just remove that blob, and then you can click done. And now you've got another wallpaper set saved to your phone. So now I'm going to switch over to focus mode, and I'm going to go to podcasting. And currently I've got one already set, but I'm going to edit that. I'm going to click that, and you go down the very bottom will be the new one I created. So I'll go ahead and click that. And you can see that you can have two at a time. You don't want that. You just want one. So I'll click that one and click done. And now focus mode, I've got the wallpaper set for focus mode. So for podcasting, this little headphone set here means that I'm in podcasting, but you can see that I've got the same color behind the wallpaper as I go in lock screen. Now, if I swipe down now and go into focus modes and switch back to personal, you can see now the background turned orange. Getting that figured out took like 2 hours of experimentation because they don't make it easy. The way they want it to work is it just sticks with the color that you originally had. The only way around this is the workflow I just showed you. Go into wallpaper, set a pair, save it there, and then you're good. I know I kind of went fast through that, but that's actually a very useful trick when you're going through this. You guys have any questions about that before I move on?
A quick one, David, that came in from Kim as you were demonstrating. She's wondering whether you have issues pinching to zoom, to crop and pinch on the actual graphic on the home screen. Does that happen to you?
Not generally, but if you saw the size of the image I used, they were iPhone shaped. I could actually go through and get the exact dimensions of an iPhone, but I was just lazy. I just drew a tall rectangle. So it's slightly off. But if you made that a big square and put the icon tiny in the middle, you would have a lot of room to pinch and zoom and move around. But I don't have a lot of room because it's a narrow image and a tall image. So there's only so many ways it's going to fit on the screen. So if you want to give yourself the ability to move that icon around, put the icon smaller and put it in a big section of the screen.
Joe asked a little earlier if you feel like the 10 focus mode limits the practical use of focus modes. Would more focus modes for you be more granular, or do you feel like 10 is a pretty good
Joe,
amount? You want more?
You're preaching to the choir, Joe. I don't know why 10 is such an arbitrary limit. I don't understand why they would do that. If you can make 10, you could certainly make 20, And like a good example for me is I have this podcast focus mode. I would much rather have a Mac Power Users, Automators, and focused focus modes where the screen color and everything changes to match the iconography of the podcast. The time zone only represents the time zone of the other person. And more importantly, I can limit interruptions from only, like if we're doing automators and I have an automators focus mode, only Rose can text me. If Steven wants to talk to me about something while I'm recording a show, I don't get it. I don't need to see that. But as it is with the podcast mode, I let Steven, Rosemary, and Mike through the block wall because I only have one focus mode for all three of them. Same thing goes for like MacSparky Labs work. I would love to have one specific to labs work versus, customer support or other stuff. I feel like if they could make 10, there's really no technical reason they couldn't make 50, honestly. But I think, it's Apple trying to be careful about not overwhelming people. But again, you could have that list just grow to match the number that you make. And if you only make 3, then it's only going to show 3. So I'm not sure why that's a problem. But if we all keep using a lot of them, maybe that'll help convince them. Yeah, the wallpaper thing is, I think, really useful. But the thing that's odd is you can't set it in the focus modes. Like when you are in the focus mode, let me go back now. If I'm in the focus mode setting and I pick this wallpaper here, there's nothing here that allows me to choose the matching color for the home screen icon. And there's no way to do it from here. They just don't have the option. And what you have to do, they say you can create a new lock screen. So if you click here, it takes you to the gallery view and you can set up a new lock screen, but there's no way to do it without going through the wallpaper. And even if you go to create a new one, it doesn't give you the option to create a company wallpaper. So it kept giving me the wrong color background on the home screen. And I know that sounds silly, but like I said, all these little things that we can help with our monkey brains does make a difference. So let's go through some of my focus modes to show you what I'm up to. So deep focus is, I talked about that earlier, but the idea of it is that, it's going to give me a way to do work without having any interruptions. One group I always let through is my wife and my two daughters. I mean, if they have a problem, there's nothing that is less important than them. So even if I'm in deep focus, if somebody has a flat tire or something, I want to know about it. And this would be a great example of a contact group that I would like to see, where I could just have their contact group of just those three and I could add it to each one. And I wouldn't have to go and manually add each one. One of the things in here I didn't mention earlier is you can also allow calls in this setting. There's a couple different preferences. You can allow from everybody. You can allow from allowed people only, which means the only people that can call me are these three people when I'm in this deep focus. You can also have it contact favorites or contacts only, or then you've got the ability to get to groups. I guess there was a question earlier about groups. You do have group access through phone calls, but that doesn't apply to notifications. This top window is the notifications, and they don't have group integration for that. I think somebody had their hand up. Did you get your question answered already, or?
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt. I was just showing that I was able to get the matched pair inside the focus mode.
Oh, excellent. And did it stick?
Yeah, I did it once, and I was just doing it again. I haven't tried this before, but I listened to what you said, and I got it to work okay.
Yeah, well, I have had very inconsistent behavior from that. Let me know if it sticks for you, and we'll talk, and I can update for it. The wallpaper method works every time. That's, and then I talked earlier about the Disneyland one. This is it's silly, but I realized that I wanted to have a Disneyland focus mode because we spend all this money on these passes, and there's nothing worse than like going to be somewhere with your family, especially something that you've paid for, and then have like work interrupt you and take away all the fun from it. So this is an exclusive group where it's like it's only going to allow certain people through, and this is largely my family and friends that go to Disneyland with me. And otherwise nobody gets through. And I see JF, look at that, you're in there too. So JF's the only guy from work that can get me when I'm at Disneyland. And then I allow calls from favorites. This one's kind of interesting because I trigger it using location. And this was a trick that Rosemary Orchard turned me on. So you can have a location aware notifications, but the problem with Disneyland is it's a big place. They have a parking structure on one block. They got Disneyland, they got DCA, they got a bunch of real estate. And she's the one who said, oh, you could use multiple locations. So I just started adding locations anywhere. And now anytime I drive over to Anaheim and get near the Disney complex, it just switches for me. And I've got a custom wallpaper, and I've got and I've got a custom home screen. So I'll show you that one. This is a strange one for me because, like the battery widget is something I would never put on my home screen. I mean, you don't need a battery widget on your home screen. But but in this case, when you're at a theme park, you actually want to know how your batteries are. So I put that on there. I put the analog time. I put the hourly weather. So, it's a different app set. This one doesn't really solve the problem of focus like I was talking about earlier, so much as it gives you a contextual set of applications for a specific location. So going to the next, driving, this is one that Apple puts in automatically. I have my car has the thing in it where you plug the phone in and you get the CarPlay. And then I just put the phone in the glove box. So I don't actually see my phone when I'm driving, but I do kind of like having a very simple watch face. So I made this Explorer face. It's the only time I use the Explorer face. I don't have any widgets on it. And when I'm driving, that's what's there. And then if I have driving directions, it'll push directions to my watch too. But, the whole idea is as few distractions as possible when you're driving. And I thought that made sense. Going back at personal, we've been talking, this is my most inclusive focus mode. I use focus modes so often that I just usually have one turn on 24/7. This is kind of my non-focus focus mode. It's personal. I let a lot of stuff through, but I do like the ability to cut people out if I need to, And then podcasting is a very specific one. And I just talked earlier about how I'd like to limit that even more. But this one has all my podcasting partners, Mike, Rosemary, and Steven, and my family. And it only allows calls from those people. Another thing I do with podcasting is I'm very specific with my widgets. Now, I had changed this a minute ago to demonstrate for you. But if you look at my actual standard podcasting home screen, I've got on my lock screen, I've got widgets there to show time zones and events. Okay, moving on. The production is the place where I do video production and screencasting. And so whenever I'm in that, I don't want a lot of notifications. There's nothing worse than having a good recording going with a screencast and then a bunch of notifications start sliding in and we got to deal with that. So this one is very limited. It's just my editor, JF, and my family. And this one, I use when I actually am pushing the red button for anything that's not an audio recording. And then reading mode is one I haven't shared yet. This one is much more inclusive, but it's not like personal where I let anybody in. It's just kind of like dear friends. And I have a custom home screen for this. So let me put that on. That just kicked off a shortcut you may have seen. I'm gonna show you what I'm doing with those shortcuts in a minute. But this is just, when I'm reading. I have the Reader app widget. I have Audible. I don't really know I have Audible here because this is listening, not reading. And then I have the Kindle app, which is where I do a lot of reading. I have tinnitus, so I like noise in the background, the thunderstorm widget. And then I'll often take notes when I'm reading books. So I just have the Obsidian app. That's where I take notes for book reading. And just a real simple, setup here.
David, while you slightly pause, if you don't mind, Harry is wondering, really wants to know what are those 4 or 3 rather, plus the camera on your dock on the iPhone.
Okay, Harry, put a pin in that. I will show you that in just a minute. And then the sleep one is automatic. I don't do a lot with this. I let it turn on. I mean, I used to have a custom home screen in sleep with like drafts where I could, like, if I was thinking about something, I could write it down. But I really try to avoid looking at a LED screen at night, and I just put a pad of paper and a pencil next to my bed. I can write something down, but if I wake up in the middle of the night, I do not want to turn the phone on. So there's not a whole lot here to see. And then the work one is a more inclusive version of deep focus. There's a bigger group of people that I let in. I allow more calls in. There's a bigger group of apps that I allow notifications from. It's still focused, but it's kind of more general. And like when I'm doing the lighter work stuff, I don't mind getting notifications. And I also have custom, I showed you that screen already, but I use Fantastical to show me upcoming events and OmniFocus to show me active tasks. And my watch face turns blue. So I've got a blue watch face when I do that. I mean, all this stuff is really, it sounds, if you listen to this, I feel like I'm with family here, so I can tell you guys. Most people, when they realize that I have like all my watch faces turn different colors depending on what I'm working on, think I'm insane. And I get it. But I think it really helps me. And that's why I'm using this stuff. None of this stuff is really rocket science. And I'm not trying to make it overly difficult for myself. I just want it to be easy to get my brain engaged with what I need to work on. And I guess that leads to kind of like this next topic is where do you trigger these things? Like you can do all of this via automation if you want. And you can write shortcuts where you trigger a shortcut and it triggers a focus mode. I find generally, I've tried that, but I find generally I don't do that. I actually like the manual process of turning them on. You drag down, you've seen me doing it throughout this video. You just drag down, you pick your focus mode. And I find that there's an intentionality to that kind of helps me say, okay, now I'm doing deep focus. I just push the button. That works for me. Now, if you want to automate triggering these, it's very easy. It's a one-step action in shortcuts. What I do find useful with shortcuts is after I trigger a focus mode, what do I do with it? And for example, if I go into shortcuts and look at automations, like I have one here for when I turn on deep focus. And what I do is I just have it run a shortcut. And the shortcut that I run is the deep focus shortcut. And then, so if I go also into shortcuts and go down, and I have a folder for focus stuff. And so when I turn on deep focus, I set a timer for 60 minutes because deep focus for me after 60 minutes stops being deep. So I just want to remind myself to take a break. I play the thunderstorm sound and I send it to the speakers in the studio. I'm redoing all these because I'm moving spaces, but I've got some home pods in here and I like the white noise background of a thunderstorm. And that's what happens every time I trigger deep focus. That happens. And it's very easy to do in automation. I talked about it in the shortcuts field guide, but just to show you real quick, you just go under automation and then you drag down, hit new, personal automation, then you drag down, all your focus modes are there. So if you pick one, say pick work, say when I turn work focus mode on, what do I do? And the way they make it, you can add the actions in here in the automation tab. I recommend that instead you create the shortcuts independently. And then here you just say add action, run shortcut. Whoops. I got to start over now. See, there's an action for run shortcut. And then you just insert the shortcut that you created independently. That way you can edit it without having in this automation field. And then you can also run the shortcut in other places. But I primarily trigger these things through the watch and the phone. You can do it on the Mac too. That's fine. On the Mac there, you just go up to the menu bar, click the button. But I am much more of a fan, just the way I use them, of using automation after the focus mode is triggered. And I find that the practice of manually triggering them actually kind of helps me. I mean, just to kind of summarize, when we started this, I was talking about the importance of, seizing control of our technology and becoming focused. Hopefully you can see at this point, I mean, this stuff can really help you kind of nudge you along. It's not going to do your work for you, but hopefully create circumstances where you're in the mindset to do the work and be less likely to go off and, search Amazon for the next thing you want to buy, or go on Instagram to see the vacation your friends are pretending they're having, or whatever, distracts you. And I hope this stuff helps you guys because, it is a battle and we got to all figure out our own way through it. Are there any other questions about this stuff, like my particular focus mode? Oh, and I will show you those icons in a minute. But before we do that, any other questions on the stuff I just covered?
Gene is wondering whether you can maybe quickly review the setup from scratch of a new focus mode, at least just kind of walk through, because I know you went through all the settings.
Sure.
He was just curious how to set these up. Thank you for the question, Gene.
All right, let's do that. And let's see, which one am I going to nuke? Well, you know what?
The easiest one.
Just give me a second here. Well, I'm going to go through a hypothetical one because I actually don't want to delete one because then it's a lot of work to put it all together. But let's just go through, let's say I was going to put together the deep focus one, So, or you know what? Heck with it. I'll just do that. Okay. So, delete that. And then you hit the plus button in the top right corner. They've got recommended ones here for you. And they're all great. If you want to try them out, go for it. But I'm going to make a custom one. And we're going to call this one Deep Focus. And sadly, they don't have a lot of options here. Like there's the blue that I'm going to use, which is generally the MacSparky work. But they don't have shades of blue that I really want for this. And they don't also have a lot of icons, which is funny because I was talking about earlier about SF Symbols. SF Symbols has hundreds of icons. Apple put a very small percentage of them here. And I'm going to say, well, what's going to remind me of deep focus? What here kind of strikes that? Well, really, none of them really do. But I ended up picking books, like I'm going to deep focus into books. But then that kind of conflicts with reading. I'm using a bookmark for reading. So either way, I'll use that. And then I'm going to say customize the focus. And then you start choosing people, and it's got a recommended list here. And deep focus is the one where I only let a few people through. It's just my wife and my kids. So there's just the 3 people. You can add more if you add people. It goes to your contact database. So we'll click next. Who do I allow calls from? Allowed people only. Click done. And you can see it's done a lot of the setup for me there. If you go into here, I'm going to hide, actually I do want to hide notification badges with this one. And then I'm going to pick a home screen. Well, I've already set this up through wallpaper. We've talked about that. It's this deep blue. So I click done. And then which screen am I going to use for my home screen? Well, I've got one here for deep focus. It's very limited. It's this one right here. And it does almost nothing because when I'm in deep focus, honestly, I'm not goofing off on my phone too much anyway. And I'm not going to have it activate my smart modes. And I'm not going to put any focus filters on, but if I want to just click add filter, and let's say during this, I'm only going to get a MacSparky related email. And now I've added that. And that's kind of the basic setup of one. I think the trick with these is you kind of need to be vigilant with them. As you create them, you're going to see things that come through that you didn't want to come through. Like deep focus, maybe I get an app sends me a notification and I'm like, oh, this shouldn't be bothering me when I'm in deep focus. And you can go in the focus mode and specifically, target that app. So I really think that the trick with this stuff is, do your best to set it up to begin with, but at some point just start using it and you'll know when it breaks for you and you've got the tools now to go in and try and fix it. Those icons on my dot, was there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question, please. When you selected the lock screen and then the home screen had a dark purple background.
Yeah.
And so do you set up all the widgets and the dark purple is going to turn blue in real life? Because you set up the pairs earlier. So
yeah, let me show you that. So if I pull down now and I go into deep focus, even though it showed purple in the setup, you can see it goes to this dark blue. And this is why I set those things up with wallpaper. They're paired kind of like fundamentally when you do it through wallpaper. And somebody said they figured out how to do this in the focus mode. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute. But just historically, I have found that the home screen color would stick with whichever focus mode I originally set. And it like this would be purple, even though I'm in deep focus mode. But as soon as I figured out that if I pair them at creation in the wallpaper section of settings, those always stick for me. So now you saw it was purple because I was reading. I went to deep focus, which I just created, and it remembered because those were paired at creation. If I go back to reading now, it'll go back to purple, and that was shockingly difficult to sort out. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, so the fact that there's dark purple in the settings is irrelevant.
Yeah,
And if
exactly.
it's gonna,
Yeah, so like if I go
thank
into
you.
settings and you see the reason it's dark purple right now is because the current focus mode is purple. And if I go to any one of these, you'll see that it shows up as purple. But if I go now and switch the focus mode over to deep work again, okay, it's all blue. Now, if I go into settings, you'll see no matter which focus mode I'm looking at, they're blue. Well, this one doesn't have a color, but like this one. And that's not the actual home screen setup. What this middle button does is it allows you to choose the widget and icon setup for that focus mode. It doesn't allow you to choose the color. That I think is a mistake. There should be a button or a way that from this screen, I can set the color. But the only way I find to make that work consistently is to do it in the wallpaper. In fact, somebody had said they figured out a way to make it stick earlier during the call. Who was that, and how's it going for you?
That was me. I think the whole thing is a little bit buggy.
Yeah.
But I was able to do it here by picking the main screen fresh and setting it immediately as pairs. And sometimes it would show it in the paired part, and sometimes it didn't.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not consistent. It's just but if you use the wallpaper trick, it works every time. And so, what I would recommend if you want to use my trick of colors, pick your colors, make that artwork, and just save it to your photos. Your photos, Apple Photos library, and then go through wallpaper and just set them up, and at the same pair them right then, and then go into the focus modes and create them, and you won't have a problem.
I did see that I could sometimes change the background color from this screen by re-editing it, and the tint, and it had several options. What I found I couldn't do now is I couldn't readjust what apps I had selected to show up. Not notification, but on the home screen.
Yeah, it's just buggy. So just separate those two tasks. Do the colors and the actual backgrounds and the wallpaper pairs. And like the other thing I found is even when I was able to get it to work in the Focus app, it only allowed me to do gradients, and I didn't want gradients. I just wanted a solid color, and they don't have a feature for that. Somebody had asked me about these icons on the bottom of my screen. These are all choose from menu shortcuts. I'm going to do a video for the labs on this, or maybe we'll do a webinar on it in the future. But basically, it's a choose from menu shortcut, and I can log time. I can deal with email, and they're themed here. So the little cup of coffee, that is all personal related shortcuts. This is all MacSparky related shortcuts, and this is kind of like a catch-all. And so if I hit the MacSparky one, and I want to go to the Sparky Media Craft installation, I just tap that button right there, and it goes straight to it. This is another form of contextual computing for me. It's like, just like in Keyboard Maestro on the Mac, I push a couple buttons and it goes exactly where I need to. This is my version of that on the iPhone. And if I have a new content idea, I just tap that. It runs a shortcut that allows me to capture a content idea and save it to the place that I save content ideas. Or if I want to go to the mind map that I have for my company and the stuff I'm making, I press that. It opens my node to that exact page. Or I want to see my active projects list, or if I want to deal with social media. So this is like a shortcut for me to get to places I need to go. And I know that was a very limited discussion. If you guys are interested in this, let me know, and we'll schedule a future video on this, and I'll go through exactly how you create them. But I found this way more useful than like putting an app in the dock. So this is like a super app, and it does whatever I want. The only one I keep down here is the Photos app, and I know it's like I go back and forth on that. It's like you can also access photos so many ways. You can access it in the lock screen, you can in Control Center, but with family, I want to get pictures immediately. And if the kids are doing something fun, you have to be like, it's almost like, you have to get in there right away, because the kids don't like you taking their pictures, And so you got to get to that camera app really quick. I mean, my kids started not liking me taking their pictures when they were little, and now they're in their 20s. They still don't like me taking their pictures. So I got to get to that app quickly. So that's the reason I keep that one. But yeah, those apps are all just like a bunch of different choose from menu shortcuts where I can get the stuff. Like I have to amend this one. I've still got some law stuff left in here. I got to get rid of that. I kept it just in case anything got active after I hung it up. But like if I want to get to the MPU form, and so it's just a nice way to get to specific locations. You know, I believe contextual computing is really part and parcel of this stuff I'm doing with focus modes. I mean, this is really, you know, if you want to know what I really want you to get out of the labs, it's this. I want you to be able to turn your technology on its head and help you do whatever it is that is important to you. And I want to go on that journey with you. But so that's another piece of this. I'll go ahead and, in fact, I'm talking myself into it. You guys want me to do something on those choose from menu icons? Does that sound like something you'd be
Lots
interested
of
in?
immediate yeses in the chat,
Okay.
David.
All right. Okay. So we'll schedule
we
that
should-
out probably if not October, certainly November. And the nice thing is these are a lot easier to set now because I have my own space and I don't have to like schedule it around the rest of the family. So hopefully we can get some more stuff out for you. Any other questions about focus modes though before we hang it up today? Any ideas?
Just a short comment, David. I was thinking while you were talking about allowing people in or not in, how wonderful the next 10 years of greeting cards will be when the interior of the greeting card says, "Do you know you're on my personal focus list?"
Yeah. Well, you know what? Among us, that means something, right? You know.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know. I feel like Apple, I'm very encouraged that Apple added this feature. It's like somebody on the inside gets it and they get it enough that they're willing to commit resources to it. Because a lot of these tech companies really don't want you to focus. You know, they really want you to spend your whole day doom scrolling their apps. And it makes me happy to be an Apple guy when I see Apple doing stuff like this. I feel like this is the stuff that can really make a difference. And I just wish more people would use it. You know, it's just not that hard. I talked to some of my non-nerdy friends about this stuff, and it just doesn't sink in for them. And then you see them, like I went out to lunch with a friend, and it was like a sickness. He could not put his phone down, you know, and he was going to Facebook and Instagram. And I hadn't seen the guy since before COVID. And he's sitting here having lunch with me, and he won't even look at me because he can't help it. And then I would say, "Hey, put your phone down. Let's just chat." And he'd be like, yeah, you're right. And he'd put it down and he'd mean it. You know, it's like he realized that we should be talking, but then he would 10 minutes later, he'd pick it up again without even realizing he was doing it. It's very sad. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I sound like an old man and I sound like a preacher on this stuff, but I really feel like we gotta be mindful about this stuff. Anyway, thanks guys for coming. The turnout was great today. I really appreciate it. Final call for questions, comments, anything? You guys enjoying the labs? You feel like you're getting value? I'm going to send out a poll to you pretty soon. I'm working on it, but I'm trying to get the right mix for you. You know, stuff. I just heard from someone who said that their favorite thing about it is the little podcast every Friday, and you know, and then I'll get an email from another person that says, "I don't even know why you do that stupid podcast. I don't need that." You know, so it's just for everybody, it's a little different, but I'm trying to give you a good mix. Wolfgang?
Yeah, thank you very much for the email reminder today. I would have forgotten and I would have been so upset.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a new system we put in place, and it works through Calendly, which is not really what Calendly was designed for, but it seems to be working okay. And I talked to the guys at Fantastical. I think they're going to build that feature into the app just for me. I said, well, you could use it for anybody, and then so hopefully we'll even make it work better through Fantastical. But if you're anybody using focus modes for something really cool that I didn't mention today.
Well, David, can I share that I've been meticulously tracking my time for like the last 3 years.
Okay.
And so now I have my focus modes connected to my time tracking. So like I run a shortcut that will do my time tracking. You know, when I'm putting my mom hat on, getting away from the business, it does my time tracking. It changes the focus mode. I even have it update my Slack status so that like my team can see like, hey, she's with her kids right now, or she's driving right now. So that way they know that stuff.
I love that. And so you could do that a couple ways. You could make it so when you trigger mom focus mode, it sets the timer and does notifications.
Oh yeah.
Or you could do it where you click a shortcut and it does. You could make the shortcut the trigger. You make the focus mode the trigger. Yeah.
Right. That's the tricky part, is figuring those out.
Yeah. Well,
Go
ahead.
Have you found a good way for the driving focus mode? Because it's supposed to be based on when it knows you're driving, but like my husband gets in the car and my phone is the last one connected and it goes, "Oh, you're driving." I'm like, "No, I'm sitting at the kitchen table."
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple settings in that. It will look at the motion and set itself on, but you can turn that off or on. Or like if you have, my car has, because I plug it in to the CarPlay, I have it only set when I do that. Because I had it using the motion. I mean, and I keep talking about Disneyland, but my sister was trying to get a hold of me and I was on the Disneyland tram and it said, "No, he's driving. He can't talk to you." So I didn't turn that off. But that question of, do you trigger it with the focus mode or do you trigger with a shortcut? Originally, you could only do it with the shortcut because the focus mode triggers were broken for like 6 months. And now they work. So you could, if you want, swap it. I use the focus mode as triggers because I find it easier to just drop down and push the button for a focus mode than to.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think, Steve, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, just a little bit of feedback. You were talking about that Friday podcast thing. And of course, I get all the emails in the early access labs and everything. But I find that the Friday podcast, I'm able to consume a lot of your content in what would ordinarily be dead time. I'm driving along rather than setting aside time to read emails. So I think that's a great way of doing it. And it helps me.
Yeah. And as a guy who normally can't make a podcast less than an hour and a half, giving myself that 10-minute constraint is really good. Yeah.
True.
And you guys can thank JF for that. JF does the edits on those and make sure that I don't blabble on so long. He doesn't even tell me. Sometimes they come out and I'm like, "Oh yeah, he took out that whiny part." Okay, that's good. Brian, you have a question?
Yeah, back to the last topic about using focus modes to trigger shortcuts.
Yeah.
Have you found shortcuts, even now the latest betas, to be a little unreliable on triggering a shortcut every time you switch a focus mode, or has it been solid for you? I'm finding it latent or not.
Are you
firing all the time? Yeah.
It has been solid for me, except I've changed, like the shortcuts I fire are very simple. Like setting a timer, starting music, things like that. Anything that requires interaction with the user, those fail, and it doesn't know what to do with stuff like that. So I think the trick is to make them fairly simple shortcuts, but doing that, they've been working pretty well for me. I haven't noticed any problem.
Okay, actually, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, let me know what's going on, because I am curious about this, and I do have the ear of some people at Apple. So if it's not working, let me know. I can forward your email to people.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I guess, we got an hour and 10 minutes. Maybe we'll wrap it up, gang. I always like these calls. So and now that I haven't got to worry about everybody behind me, I feel like I could just go on all day, but I should probably get to work. And I gotta get this room set up so I can do more stuff in here. But this was really fun for me, having the first labs and video thing I've done here in the new location. Thanks everybody for coming today. Having people here really makes it so much better. Me just making a video and seeing out the world, it would not nearly have the energy or the interaction. You guys are so smart. You always bring stuff to the table. So thanks to everybody for coming. I'll get a video of this out next few days. And you guys think I should put this in the podcast feed? I think this one is one you have to watch. So we'll probably just do the video of this. Thanks everybody for coming. If you do get inspired to use some focus modes, let me know. And if you're having problems, let me know. Or if you figure out something cool, let me know. Because I definitely want to help you get this figured out, and I hope focus modes can help you as much as it helps me. So thanks everybody.